Everybody's talking about all these countless methods you can use to manifest certain things in your life, from smaller things to bigger things. For me personally, what proved to be the most useful, actually that works the best for me, is not the most, probably the most popular, which is visualization, but it's instead saying this simple sentence. It's as simple as this: I simply assume that this and that is going to happen. I simply assume that I'm going to get this. I simply assume that this situation will unfold in a certain way, and so on and so forth. You understand what I mean? Well, this isn't even law of attraction. This is what they call law of assumption. You simply assume that something's gonna happen. And I think it's incredibly, I've had so much success with it, and I think that's because this doesn't put nearly as much pressure on you as saying something like, I know that this is going to happen. I know that I am this and that. I know that this is already mine, and so on and so forth. I think saying I know puts a lot of pressure. And you're not supposed to say I hope, so I'm not even going to discuss that, because I hope is basically just lack of belief. But saying I know, I think, from my perspective, it puts a lot of pressure. There's this uncertainty. There's this subconscious mind coming and telling you, this is bullshit. No, you don't have this. You don't have this and that. You're not that. But when you say, I simply assume that something's going to happen, do you see how little pressure that puts on you? It's like, yeah, you assume it's gonna happen. You're not maybe certain 100%, but nevertheless, you assume that this is going to happen. And let me tell you another thing. I don't believe, now talking about belief, I don't believe you need to believe in something for it to manifest. Because with this technique, I gotta say, I manifested things, but I didn't truly believe 100% that I was going to get those things. And nevertheless, I manifested those things, because I simply assumed. But what's also important with this method, I believe, is after you assume something, and all it takes is just one sentence, you just say it once. After you assumed something, you just gotta let it go, which is law of detachment. You're not supposed to be thinking about all the reasons why this possibly couldn't happen for you. You're just supposed to let it go. And then you might say, well, this is difficult. It's only difficult if you make it difficult in your head. From the things that I did manifest, it turned out it wasn't all that difficult. I didn't, again, truly believe 100% that I was going to get those things, that I was going to manifest those things. But nevertheless, I just said it carelessly. I assumed that this and that is going to happen, and it did happen. So let me give you examples anyway of what I did manifest with that lately. I manifested the same thing twice, which is crazy. And it's the situation, and it's this particular situation. I work in a ship in Italy. And for all this time, except for one day, I had the cabin for myself, only for myself. Now, these cabins are for 2 people, but nevertheless, I was here all by myself for all this time, except one day. So, one day, a guy told me that there was somebody who was supposed to come over to my cabin. And, well, I wasn't gonna be living in this cabin by myself anymore. So my first reaction was, well, I was not happy about it. I was a little pissed off. But I caught myself in that reaction, and I thought to myself, okay, I say, whatever. I'm just going to assume anyway that I'll be here by myself. So even if the situation seemed already pretty certain that this guy was just gonna come over and live here, I said to myself, I simply assume that I'm still gonna stay here all by myself, and this guy will be moved to another cabin. Well then, guess what happened? After I also let go of this assumption that I made. I stayed here all by myself. I don't know what happened exactly. Nobody told me. But this guy just didn't come to this cabin at all. They moved him somewhere else. Probably, right? There's been some new guys, so he was probably one of those guys, and they moved him to another cabin. And then sometime later, like 2 weeks later or so, another guy comes over. This time they didn't even tell me that there was anybody supposed to be coming over. So at the very last occasion, they just told me, your room is a mess, you gotta clean this up, there's a new guy coming in. So that's what I did. Oh, okay. I also got really pissed off because they didn't even give me any heads up. But again, I caught myself in this initially negative reaction, and I thought to myself, now this would be even more ridiculous if I manifested the same thing again. But even then, despite what was going on, and this guy was already supposed to be coming over, he was waiting for me to clean up the cabin, which is what I did. But I manifested this again, and again I said to myself, I simply assume, no matter how ridiculous now especially it might seem, that this guy, for some reason, is just going to go to another cabin, or will be moved to another cabin. Now my assumption is, okay, maybe he's gonna be a little pissed off because my cabin wasn't cleaned up, it was a mess. But it's none of my business anyway what his reasons would be. So okay, well, turned out he stayed here for one night. And I was a little noisy, I was coughing and whatnot, I couldn't sleep. So maybe my intention exactly what my intention was, my assumption was that he was maybe gonna get a little pissed off with not only the cabin not being clean at first, but also then me being noisy, which wasn't my fault anyway. I had a little flu, so I was coughing and couldn't sleep. Well, then, guess what happens the next day? This guy just packs up his bags, doesn't even say a thing. I don't know why exactly, what's the real reason behind his decision, but he just decides to leave this cabin and doesn't come back. Now that was extremely crazy. I couldn't believe it, truly. And I didn't believe it fully at all when I did make this assumption. All I did was I just didn't make the assumption, and I let the intention go. In both these cases, that's what I did. That's all it took. It was this simple. There was no visualizing, there was no scripting, not going out of my own way just to try to manifest it. It's as simple as you making an assumption that something's going to happen and just letting it go. 2 laws. Law of assumption and law of, what was that called? Law of detachment. That's it. It's literally this simple. It was this simple for me. So try this method. In my opinion, from my own experience, I say this is the most powerful method, combining these 2 laws. And that's it. Just make the assumption, let it go. Done. So that's it. Try it yourself.